When I think about, first of all, there was a wonderful history he gave yesterday of just the struggles, the up and down struggles, and just how much patience, kind-heartedness, and perseverance it takes to really get something done. It's a wonderful story. But I also think about the fact that in the industry he worked in before he came in this direction, that industry changed so much. In the 1960s, people in the finance industry weren't making much more than you and me. It's a revolution that started in the 80s, and starting in the 80s, someone coming out of Harvard could make more money in 2 years than their parents made in their lifetime. It's been an explosion. Right now we have a world incredibly distorted by people making enormous amounts of money in little time. And he stepped away from that to be with us and work with us, and we've been very grateful. And I'm grateful to him for giving us a talk. Myong History.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Jan, for your wonderful introduction. And Marc OLeary, hi. Tough act to follow. I can't sing, I can't act, and I can't dance. Maybe I can talk a bit, perhaps. So, 12 years ago, we had a memorial ceremony for Zen Master Song San at Musangsa. And at that time, I had this job of being head monk or head Dharma teacher. And I had to give the orientation for a couple of days of retreat before the ceremony. So I walked up to the Dharma room, and lo and behold, sitting front and center were two Zen masters, Zen Master Day Kwan and Bobby, Zen Master Song Hyang. They were there. So I got a bit of a shock, like, what do they need a meditation orientation for? I mean, you know, and then a sense of rising panic. You know, then I kind of, okay, breathe. And, you know, that time I was still a fairly young monk. I guess nowadays I'd probably say, Zen Master, why don't you give the orientation? But, you know, didn't think of that. So, I tried my best to get through the orientation without being too distracted by them, and said what I had to say, then answered a few questions. Then, next question that came really threw me. Somebody asked, what's the most, are there any dangerous animals on this mountain? I thought, and whilst I was doing that, my mouth decided to disassociate itself from my brain. And it went, human beings. Like, isn't it obvious? And I heard that, I thought, what are you saying? Shut up. Stop talking. But you know, this thing just kept talking, like, if I keep talking, maybe something smart will come out. Then it kept on talking, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Then I looked at two Zen masters, thinking, they must think I'm an absolute idiot, you know. I looked at them, they were like, totally inscrutable. Except for maybe one of them, it was like very imperceptible, like. I thought, okay, I'll take that as okay. It wasn't this. And it wasn't this, but it was maybe like this, okay. So, and I completely forgot about that incident actually until I was given this topic to talk about by Jan. I thought, what am I going to say? It's like, can't they give me an easy thing to talk about, you know? But anyway, yeah, human beings. Maybe we are the most dangerous animals on this planet. Recently, not too long ago, maybe a few months ago, I read about the lionfish. And in Florida, you're getting a lot of that. It's non-native species, beautiful, lots of horns and scales. And people, I don't know how it got into the Florida or Caribbean waters, but it eats everything in its path, everything. It has got no natural predators, and it just chomps its way through everything. It eats almost a fish that's about 25% of its size, so nothing survives. So I thought, wow, that's pretty invasive. But compared to us human beings, maybe it comes a very, very poor second. I mean, we came from Africa, all of us. That's what the geneticists say. But we're not content to stay there. We've kind of colonized the whole planet. And I think there isn't an inch of this earth that we haven't set foot on. And in the process, we've kind of decimated quite a few species. So we don't really have a very good track record as being stewards of this planet. I remember Sunim used to say, or read, or heard, I can't remember exactly. New building appear, then nature broken somewhere. So my hometown has got beautiful small limestone hills. We call it in Cantonese Siu Kwai Lam. It's like Guilin in China, where they have these beautiful small mountains, small hills, and it looks a little like that. But these hills are made of limestone, very high quality limestone, and it's an essential ingredient in high quality Portland cement. So nowadays, when I go back, I see that these orange scars where all these cement companies are blasting away at these hills. So, you know, 3 years, then one hill is gone, and then another hill, then pretty soon there won't be any hills left in my hometown. So all this is really, I think, to satisfy our insatiable demand for growth, for more buildings, bigger cities, and non-stop, ever increasing or continuous economic growth. So Sir David Attenborough, one of my favorite naturalists, probably my favorite naturalist, said, anyone who believes in infinite growth on a finite planet is either a madman or an economist. Apologies to economists. I don't know about economists, but if you just look around us these days, there are a lot of the former around. But we can't all be madmen. So nowadays, the question that always seems to come back to me is, why we such an intelligent, capable species with self-awareness? Why do we appear to be so unwilling or unable to save ourselves when we have the time and the opportunity? And I can't figure it out. I think there are minds greater than mine who probably have an answer for this, but I just come up with just a complete blank don't know. And why is it that we cannot take responsibility for the consequences of our own action? Why can't we own our own shit? I don't know. So When I was first started to practice Zen in Hong Kong, I remember one student asking Subong, Zen Master Subong, and he had this, he felt very sad because there had been an earthquake and many people had died somewhere, I think in Indonesia or somewhere like that. This was like 25 years ago. So he asked him, why so many people had to die? And as a young student, I was expecting Zen Master Subong to come up with a really compassionate answer, but he said, it's correct. It's correct, these people had to die. I'm like, what? And then he said, well, cause and effect's very clear. And after initial shock, I realized that's true. We as human beings tend to consider ourselves kind of, that the planet or everything else, everything on this earth is here to serve us for our needs. And so we slap Mother Nature around quite a lot. And we're kind of surprised when Mother Nature slaps us back and says, hey boys, it's not personal, it's only business. And we think, what's going on, What did we go wrong? But I guess it's not that we don't try. We do try, but maybe we're just we don't have enough information, or we're not aware that we're headed in the wrong direction with Mother Nature. We usually think that we'll leave this world a better place than when we first come into it, so that our children may have a better life than us. But over these last 5-6 years or so, I think it seems pretty clear that if we continue with our lives without any changes, continue with business as usual, it won't be like that. So I'd like to try a little experiment with all of you. You can close your eyes if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. I'd like you to imagine a really bleak, dystopian future. And not even kind of Blade Runner landscape's gonna cut it. Okay? Just imagine how bleak it can be. Okay? All right, you can open your eyes now. If we hit all our climate change tipping points, and we get full-blown climate change, it's gonna be worse than that, I think. I don't really want to hang out. I don't want to be around to find out, actually. But I think it's going to be like that. So that is likely to be the kind of planet that we'll be making for our children and our grandchildren to live in. Perhaps not even to live in, but to try just to survive. And we're all in the same boat. It's like the Titanic. So OECD countries, the developed countries, they're in the first class above deck. As Malaysians, we're kind of slightly below deck. Excuse me. But when it goes down, the first class is going to go down as fast as us. Everybody's just going to go down the same boat. And perhaps at that time, our only consolation is this, is that if we succeed to wipe ourselves out as a species, as long as I keep practicing, at least I'll be in pretty good company with all of you. Okay? I'm sorry if it sounds pretty bleak, but before we all sink into the depths of despair, I think there's a beacon of light of hope. From our young people. For example, in Penang, we have a growing number of 20-year-olds who are starting their own organic farms who are very, very ecologically aware. And they come, bring their produce to Penang, and sell them in these farmers' markets twice a month. I know twice a month doesn't sound a lot around here, but in Penang, it's a big deal. We've been only going for about 4 years, and I think there's a growing awareness. Every month I go, a lot more people turn up. There are a lot more stalls, and I see like a lot more new, young farmers who are doing this. They're not chasing the money. They've got some other ideal in their minds. So I think that's great. And every time I go, I kind of feel a little proud, even though I'm not a Penang person. But for example, I work quite closely with a couple who run home farming workshops out of their own house to teach city folk how to grow their own vegetables, on their balconies, in their porch, whatever, just have a little, what do you call this? Pot, and they grow vegetables. And 20, 30 people go to the workshops every time. They run it twice a month. And my bit is to talk a little bit about climate change, conservation, saving water, because in Penang, we use the most water of all the states in Malaysia, and it's very, very too cheap. Like my water bill for a month, and we have people coming to the Zen Center, is 5 Malaysian ringgit. That's like $1 US. It's too cheap. It really is too cheap. But I think, well, in my country at least, the awareness is still pretty low. I mean, I've tried to talk to people, our students. I've shown them some documentaries about climate change. And like, for example, one ex-teacher I talked to, I said, it's pretty bad if we don't change our ways. And she like went, yeah, I know, we taught it in school. Everybody, all our kids know about it. And then that was it. It's like, okay, I think the general attitude there is that we expect the government or some of the government institutions to do something about it, so that we don't have to. But I think, in my not so humble opinion, they're not very effective. I mean, governments and government institutions, we have to do it. We have to start doing it ourselves. And we have to get ourselves out of this mess. We can't expect somebody else to. So, for example, in Malaysia, one of the banks, HSBC Bank, did a survey, and they found that more than 50% of the parents are willing to go into debt to fund their children's education. Okay? On top of that, more than 80% are already using their current income to pay for their children's education. So not only are they using their current income, but they want to borrow money to educate their children. So I thought, well, imagine what could be achieved if we could just kind of redirect this energy rather than work for their children's education, but actually creating or ensuring a better future for their children. And who could inspire them to do this? Politicians? Government bureaucrats? What do you think? How many people would be willing to travel hundreds of miles to listen to a prominent politician or a prominent government servant? Usually they have to come to us, press our flesh every 4 years, so they get re-elected. So I think they're not the people that are going to inspire us. But, like quite a lot of us here, we're willing to travel thousands of miles to listen to De Sunim, to study with him. Or the Dalai Lama, hundreds of miles to listen to him talk or give a initiation, or the Pope. And when I was young, I thought nothing of, getting my friends together and finding somebody who had a car, so they could drive a couple of hours to go listen to a concert, a favorite band. At my time, it was like U2, or the Stones, or even the boss, Bruce Springsteen. Okay, yeah. So maybe nowadays it's going to be what, Taylor Swift, Beyonce? I don't know, but that's not my music. But so I think it's the spiritual leaders, the musicians, the artists, the poets, the filmmakers. These are the people that can inspire us. And why is that? Because they speak to our hearts, not to our minds. I mean, I've seen Al Gore talk. I saw his first documentary. That's kind of okay. But I don't think it inspired me as much as, say, listening to De Sunim or some spiritual teacher, or even some music that I really connected with. So I think that if you all spiritual leaders, and some of you are musicians, some of you are artists, some of you are filmmakers, some of you are poets, if you step up and inspire others, I think we could do a lot. So, I don't have an answer to what a true human being is, but I think that if we do something, we can reclaim our true human heritage. So, some of you are not going to like this. How about starting with something simple that we can change today? Our diets. So, a few years ago, maybe about 5-6 years ago, the United Nations FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, put out a report called Livestock's Long Shadow. And then it's followed up by a World Bank study by Robert Goodland, really nice man who's died, and Jeff Anhang. And they found that livestock farming is a huge contributor to global warming greenhouse gases, mainly because these ruminant animals, they tend to fart or belch a lot. And that's the nature of the beast. So, and methane, that's what comes out. As university students, you tend to like your thing. That's 20 times as bad as carbon dioxide for warming our climate. But it doesn't last as long as carbon dioxide. It's much shorter lifespan. So if we could cut our meat and dairy consumption, it would make an immediate impact. Very quick. But it's something that we have to be willing to do. And a recent University of Cambridge study, they found that the average efficiency of converting plant feed to meat is only 3%. If any of you ran a business that's 3% inefficiency, you wouldn't be in business very long. But we still insist on it. And if China and the rest of Asia and India start to eat like the West, I don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, I know we all like our bacon and our cheese and our yogurt, but if we can't do it 100%, why not 80% maybe? You know, eat meat and dairy, whatever, once a week, 1 day a week. And the rest of the time, just try plant-based. I mean, we could try it out here now. You know, we've got whole week's worth of vegetarian, vegan food and see how you like it. And I don't think anybody's going to die. So, for our children, and our children's children, and all of those who will come after us, please, let's just try to do it. Thank you.